I'm here with Joriam, who was our Enspiral catalyst. And I'm reaching out to you because I'm doing a big update to our Enspiral handbook, and I came across the agreement for catalysts. And I'm reading it, and it's brilliant document, but then a flag comes in my in my mind. There are currently no catalysts in the network. And I was feeling, should this be archived? And then I reached out to you. You said, don't archive it yet. Let's have a conversation. So this is a perfect moment to actually harvest some insights about your role as a catalyst. What is a catalyst, and why shouldn't we archive the agreement?
Do you mind if we start with the last question? Because it's the
Absolutely.
most operational one, and I have strong thoughts about that. But first of all, just to address very clearly what I'm doing here, I am representing my own opinions. My name is Jorian. I was the Inspire Catalyst for 2.5 years. For most of this time, I was a catalyst in partnership with John Guerin. And yeah, I was trained by him, and for most of this time we operated together as a duo. I haven't been the Inspire Catalyst for 1.5 years-ish, but I still think that it should be there in the handbook, and I'll tell you why. The catalysts are a technology that was prototyped by Inspiro, and that one works, and two is creating impact in the wider world. And I have a very tangible experience of this impact that the catalyst create in the world, because I carry on being a catalyst. I'm just not the Inspiro catalyst anymore, but catalyst is still my profession. I've been working for a network of doctors and health professionals in the UK, but doing the job and the operations that I learn as an Inspiro catalyst. But also the idea of Inspiro catalysts and the handbook and a segment about catalysts in the Better Work Together book were part of the building blocks that these people who eventually hired me used to create this job. So they went to our handbook, they studied a lot of different materials, not only Inspire materials, but this was part of what they used to create this work over there. So not only I have this real experience, but I imagine that if they did it, other groups might have done it, other groups might be using it. That's why I don't think it should be archived. Um, During my whole time at Inspire, even before I was a catalyst, I saw a lot of technologies being experimented, and I saw technologies failing. We tried something called stewards, and it didn't work. Didn't work. And so we archived it. But with Catalyst specifically, since I can see that it worked before, it carries on being working. It carries on being impactful in the world. Even if we don't have active catalysts and we address it in our handbook, we can tell people that we have evidence that in some scenarios this is useful. So don't keep it up, keep it there, keep it shining.
I love it. Wow, and it's such a great example. I mean, this is also what happened to me. I mean, in a very different way, but when I first came across Enspiral, it was the handbook, and it was like, wow, this is great. So many cool things there, and lots of learning. So it's really amazing to hear that. Actually, I didn't know that this technology was prototyped in Enspiral and developed here. Um, and so, yeah, great to hear that you're actually carrying on with that role outside of Enspiral. So I'm curious what actually the catalyst is, and what does this technology create? What's this impact that you were mentioning?
Okay, so I'm going to give you the broad strokes answer to that question, but there is a much more detailed example that me and John we wrote when we were catalysts. It was part of our a job posting effort, because there was a moment that we were looking for new catalysts, and we systematized what it means to be a catalyst in Inspiro. So there are parts of this longer explanation that are Inspiro specific, but basically a catalyst is just like its chemical name, is somebody who joins a network, joins a solution, and provokes connections, provokes reactions. So that might mean different things in different networks, but basically, any network that feels like they could be more, that feels that they could have more quantity of connections and more quality of connections could use the work of a catalyst. So in Enspiral, my work was a lot about coordination. People had time for Enspiral, but they didn't exactly know where to plug in. And it was much easier for them if I could give them a set of options. Oh, you could do this, you could do that, you could do that. Oh, do you have 3 hours? Then this is the best way to interact with Enspiral with 3 hours. Oh, do you have 10 minutes? This is the best way to interact with 10 minutes. While in my new job as a catalyst, for example, the bulk of my work is enthusiasm. So having one-on-one conversations with people and using emotional energy to talk about what people really care gets a lot done. But then again, if I worked for a third network, that those functions might be slightly different. But they are all about deepening connections, finding themes that that a lot of people are interested in, pointing out to them that they all share something. It's a very subtle work.
Intangible, but very tangible also in terms of impact. I'm curious, what is the maybe not exactly difference, because that's maybe not the right word to describe it, but in Enspiral specifically, we are really based around this rhythm of gatherings where we meet in person, and this is where the connections really happen, right? And are being kind of people get to know each other and energy is being moved. So how do you operate within that rhythm? Like, are you some kind of a complementary agent to the gatherings, or how do those core technologies weave together?
No, but here's the thing. When I worked as a catalyst for Enspiro, well, nowadays, just as a context, if anybody's watching this video, nowadays we have something called Enspiro Europe. Very self-explanatory. By the time we didn't, there was just Enspiro, and most of the people were in New Zealand, and I was very aware of it. And I was lucky enough to be part of one of the events, but I was more in recording role than as the organizer of the event. I was not organizing the event at all. So I, as a catalyst for Enspiro, never participated in any organizing of any event. And the gathering team was one of the groups that needed the least catalyzing. Because they knew what they had to do and it was a budget and it was a bit different from other groups. And also from the start, as John, my partner in catalyzing, was going to move to New Zealand, evidently that was the function, that this function was distributed to him. Yeah, here's a bold claim. There is Enspiro even without gatherings. All of the stuff that I did, not only I found at the time that was very relevant and that was effective in connecting people, but when I left my catalyst position, I heard a plethora of stories of how people didn't realize how much they would miss this and this and that.
Do you have some specific examples of this, like little gems that might have not been so obvious that are being created by this catalyst role, but then when the catalyst disappears, suddenly, oh, we missed this. What were like the biggest gems?
Well, you're catching me off guard here. I don't have this systematized, and it's been a while. But for example, something that I remember hearing, I was not the most active person on Slack, for example, but I gathered some information here and there to help with the people who made the newsletter, and I recorded this little updates video that was not very watched, honestly. So I thought that when I stopped doing that and the newsletter continued, I wouldn't have a significant impact. But a lot of people came to me and said, man, there's much less stuff happening on Slack. And And of
Mm.
course, I can only make a correlation. I cannot make a causation of that. But the fact that I stopped doing my stuff and then there was less activity on Slack seems connected enough. Um, but yeah, there were many different processes. We had like the assembly sprints, which were a moment in the year that a lot of people got together to do some deep Enspiral work, and they just haven't happened anymore, as far as I know. So yeah, something got lost there, but it was not something structural that would destroy Enspiral, but it was definitely something that made Enspiral a bit colder, I'm gonna say.
Yeah, not missing this, like, yeah, the catalyzing energy. I really like this chemical explanation of it. It really does make a
Was
lot
it
of sense.
Susan? Was it Susan came up with this? Mwah, genius.
Beautiful name. And it's kind of, yeah, like on one hand, it's maybe unusual role. Like, I never came across this in other organizations, but it's kind of self-explanatory in some way, or like, you kind of get that it's about creating this energy, this movement, things are starting to happen. And it can be very subtle things, sometimes just like a little pointer, hey, do this. I like also what you were mentioning about, if you have 10 minutes, do this. If you have 3 hours, do this. It's just kind of directing the energy where it's really needed most. And I guess also in alignment with what are this person's unique gifts and skills and talents that they can bring for the network.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that Catalyst is especially useful in voluntary networks. Nobody needs to be an Enspiral. And in this new network that I'm working for the Q community, nobody needs to be there. So why are people there? They're clearly seeking something. So tapping into that, you are here for a reason. You were seeking connection. You were seeking knowledge. You were seeking betterment. I can help you get there. I just want to know, where is your fire? What is the thing that you really want to do? And exactly. If you have 10 minutes to do exactly that, then hey, here's an opportunity. Hey, could you help me? I need your expertise for 1 hour. And if you do that, I'll connect you for 1 hour with somebody else. There's this true magic that shows up when people feel heard and when they're there because.
I feel you. I wonder actually, like, what then makes an excellent catalyst, or like, what are the skill set, maybe the obvious ones, but also I'm more curious in the less obvious ones that really make this role tick. And I assume this is kind of network or context dependent, but yeah, probably there are some broader ideas that are cross context.
Yeah, this is definitely a network specific in many cases. For example, I believe, and fair enough, this is a personal opinion, but hey, it's a relevant personal opinion because I was there. I believe that John was a better suited catalyst for Enspiro specifically than me, because he had a more structured approach to things. John liked to put things in spreadsheets and calendars, which is different from me. I struggle with calendars, and this is an energy that Enspiros needed to get the enthusiasm going. Somebody to take care of this structure. But I would say that there's definitely a social and emotional inclination. Not only be a social person, be an emotional person, but you have social and emotional tools at your disposal that you can use, conversations, um, in activating people. I think there's something about understanding how micro movements create macro movements. So if you know that your little action can reverberate in the big group, and how you can make it reverberate in the big group, this is a crucial catalyst skill. There's something about turning the invisible work visible. So a lot of care work goes into catalyzing. My first true interaction with the working groups in Enspiral, before I was even a catalyst, was with the Well working group. It was a group that helped people de-stress and deal with the internal conflicts and whatnot. So that was a good school to then bring to the wider group, not make people create systems that made people benefit without getting stressed out of benefiting from Enspiral. What else can I put here? Yeah, I think there's also a character of experimentation, gathering data from the network by conversation, by exploring dashboards and whatnot, and creating little experiments to see if people are going to tap into that. Yeah, I think that's what I got right now.
Perfect. Yeah, I can see how all these little pieces and big pieces you mentioned combine together. And I love this idea specifically you mentioned noticing how micro movements can create like big ripples. Yeah, like, you know, and it aligns so much also with technology from habit building. You know, it's like basically you're looking for tiny things that make big impact and you just kind of replicate them, and then, you know, things happen. There's some rhythms maybe, and just optimal use of energy. So it's, yeah, like how my brain now processes what you're saying is like, yes, there's the social aspect of it, and really like emotional relating to another person and supporting them into being the most effective contributor by finding what is that excites them and then just matching this together, and then, yeah, like just this very subtle energy management, like, go there. That's going to be a good place for you, I think.
Here's an
Try it.
example of a catalyzing that I do very often in my new job. I attend a lot of events. It's a crucial part of the thing is to help people organize, help facilitating and attending the events. And when I'm in those events, I pay a lot of attention to the chat, you know, the little text chat on Zoom. And because I am paying attention to those conversations people are having during the events, I get to hear about keywords and themes that people are interested. So let's say that I hear about a health, a UK health and care theme. So something that's not even directly related to the things that I understand, but I hear this term once and twice and thrice, and eventually I find somebody in our network who has experience with the thing. I can come to that person and say, that thing that you're passionate about, I heard this and this and this person and this and this and this situation declare that they are looking for somebody like you. Would you like to organize an event about it? So and the person's like, of course, if people are interested, why wouldn't I? This is what I'm here to do. I joined this network voluntarily to do this. So then we organize the event, and of course, in this event, there will be a chat. So this, this is a virtuous cycle that creates interest and connection between people.
Wow, and yeah, I can see how it maximizes participation in a very healthy way. Like, oh yeah, you get this feeling of fulfillment, connection, belonging, and you're doing something you're passionate about, and you're just kind of creating or opening doors and pointing at the doors, like, oh, there's a door there. You could cross that.
Exactly.
It seems like a good one for you.
And sometimes somebody making a small comment on the chat is all I need to point somebody to create something that will have more impact in the community. So it goes from the social, be very socially active, to that thing that I mentioned, that the small act that will reverberate in the whole community.
That makes a lot of sense. So kind of following up from that, what I'm curious is, so let's say there is an organization, a network that would like that feels like something that they need or could use, like this role of a catalyst. And maybe there's, you know, already someone like an obvious choice, or, you know, just hiring person that they know. I don't know. Like what are the, like, how to start grooming a person to fit for the needs of the organization, right? Because that's the kind of the magic, right? I assume there's the skill set. Okay, you have the emotional intelligence, you have your tools, you're kind of reading between the lines of people chatting, you have all the kind of organizational basics, but like, how do you become a good fit, and how do you find yourself like perfectly aligned with the needs of the organization?
Here's how I did it the two times that I was hired for different Catalyst jobs. The initial moment is a moment that is way less about doing and way more about having as many conversations as you can. So, as a catalyst, as a professional catalyst, I cannot imagine a catalyst that gets to a new job knowing exactly what they're going to do. This is a sort of a contradiction of the job itself. You cannot know what you're going to do. So a network finds out that they could use more quality and quantity of connections within the group that they have. They hire a catalyst. The first thing that this catalyst needs to do is to have a plan on what they're going to do to have as much conversations and connection points as they can. So I recommend, this is maybe my own personal style, but I recommend one-on-one conversations with people from all parts of the network. So when I joined Enspiral, I talked with people who had been in Enspiral for 7 years, and I had conversations with people who had joined Enspiral 2 weeks prior. And I had conversations with people who worked for Enspiral, and I had conversations with people who wanted to work for Enspiral, and I had conversations who had no intention of working for Enspiral. So I could get like a very varied sense of who was there. When I joined my new job, I had a lot of conversations with people from the team that hired me, but also with the members. The founding members had been there for 4 years, or people who had just gotten there the month prior, and just really trying to encapsulate everybody from that community, not to try to systematically understand everyone, but to get a feel of how people felt about it, the differences in opinions between people who had been there a long time and people who had not, this sort of things. And there's a lot of this work that is just purely intuitional, really.
Yeah, I like this. That actually what makes like the only thing that makes sense is for you to show up not really knowing what you're gonna do, and then just
You have a
building
very structured
context,
plan. You're not doing this right.
and then just build up the context, right? By having deep conversations with as many people from all sides of organization. And then I imagine the next step is you start tuning in to what is actually the needs, the kind of, or the bigger needs of the organization, and from there you can start deploying yourself as a catalyst in some more, like in some different way than just having conversation to gain context.
Exactly. So imagine something like that. So that tomorrow I'm going to join a new network as a catalyst. My proposal for them would be, in the first 2 months, I'm gonna, or even 1 month and a half, depends on the how active the network is. I'm gonna act as a sponge. I predict that in a month and a half, I can have 30 different one-on-one conversations with different people. I will interact with the online platform you're using, and I'm going to start posting there and doing my very rudimentary experiments, seeing what people do and what works, and trying to reproduce more or less what I see and testing it out. I'm gonna start having a list of the things and needs of what people tell me is most important to them, and those themes are later going to be incorporated in my actual strategy on what to do. And at the end of this 1 month and a half, 2 months, I'm going to come back with you with a plan that will be backed by all of those conversations and interactions. So you can have a structure to learn. You just can't have a structure as if you had already learned.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you still have a structure. There's still like this very tangible steps that you're taking, right? Which are basically conversations, sponging.
Basically conversations in a way, and like processing those conversations. You're not just having the conversations for the
Yeah,
sake of them.
of
You're
course.
actively trying to learn. So you also need to have a system to systematize that learning. Of course, this process is very different and much faster if you had already been part of the network for a while.
Mm,
But even if you had, because I was part of Inspire for years before I became a Catalyst, uh, the process is inevitable. It might be quicker, but you cannot fully avoid it.
mm. So to kind of put a bit of a different perspective on this whole roles, I'm always curious about the shadow side of it. Like, what are some of the challenges that you experience as a catalyst, either in your new role or in Enspiral, or some like potential pitfalls, this kind of stuff? Because yeah, it feels sometimes this is more even useful to know from, of course, your perspective, your experience, which I know is very different from anybody else's.
It's fine. I'll tell you about it, and this video will be in the handbook. But just as a point of order here, there is a video in which I delve deep into this shadow side. I posted this video when I stopped being a catalyst. It's a half an hour long, highly emotional video that I am not ready to share publicly. So if you're part of Enspiral, you will have access to this video if you just dig enough. If you're not, I'm sorry. Sorry, I will not. I will not make this public. I'm not ready. But the shadow side is something that I've been dubbing the tyranny of love. Enspiral was too good to me, and I don't mean this ironically. So there was a moment in 2020 when my dad was in the hospital with COVID, and he was very close to death. And my grandpa had just died. It was hard. And I came back to Enspiro and I said, listen, I can't do this right now. I can't make lunch right now, let alone being like an emotionally supportive, enthusiastic catalyst. I'm very sorry, but I'm gonna have to take a hiatus. And when Inspiro came back to me saying, of course, not the institution didn't come back to me, people came back to me, but what people discussed and then came back to me was, we're gonna keep paying you and you don't have to do anything. And you tell us when you can come back, and there's no time limitation here. We're just gonna keep paying you. So what do you do with people like that? Like, how do you work reasonable hours for people who treat you like this? How do you? I don't know how to do that. I always worked unreasonable hours for Inspiro. And here's another situation. I was working unreasonable hours for Inspiro, and I came back to the Catalyst support team and I said, folks, I'm very sorry, but when I started being a catalyst, my financial situation was one. Now my financial situation is another. I understand that we don't have a budget. I am a person who interacts with the budget. So it means that I'm gonna have to cut some hours and have a better relationship with this work. So I just wanted to start this conversation. And then they came back to me after a conversation and said, yeah, we're just gonna pay you the same and you'll work half of your hours and that's fine for us. Yeah, you're too valuable. So yeah, half an hour, half the hours, it's fine. How do you actually work half of the hours for people who treat you like this? You know, love is tyrannical. I did not manage to keep my promises to take care of myself because these people was like lovely to me. And Spyro, not only like the institution in Spyro gave me the opportunity to step back from the catalyst role and still being paid when I was living this crisis in my life, but the individuals in Inspiral, they sent me fucking food, man. They sent me gin. They sent me a bunch of gifts showed up at my door. People from New Zealand sending gifts to me in Germany, and they coordinated amongst themselves so that each gift would get there in a different week. So I would always have gifts in place. How do you work a little for people who do that? I don't know. I had to quit.
Wow, what a story.
Quit.
Wow.
It was taking over my life because when I did not do my absolute best, I felt horrible because I love these people. You know, I love them. And that was the shadow side. I was completely taken over by the niceness of the whole thing, and I did not have like personal boundaries or boundary systems that would allow me to work reasonably. Enspiral never kicked me out. Enspiral wanted me more than ever, but I had to step back because I was working too much.
Too much love can kill you.
Yeah, don't suck too hard on a lollipop, you know.
Wow, that's an incredible story and also like a very powerful reminder. And I guess this is particularly relevant into this high purpose, high love environments where people just care so much and they just want to be such good friends and such good contributors that yeah, this is great and this is beautiful, but also there's the other side where you can just end up pushing yourself so hard that uh you just don't feel well in your body and in your health, and like yeah, you need to take a break. So yeah, that's a powerful reminder to hear.
Yeah, but just like my burnout was real. I am just back on Slack. I had to take a 1 year, over a year long break on Slack. One of the things that was really hard about working for Enspiral was that every day I had 110 messages, and they were all addressed to me.
Ta-da! Deal with that now.
Exactly. And when I first got there in the morning, I had no way to prioritize. I did not know what the messages say. Some of the message was like, "Hey, thanks, man," and some other message was like, "I need something urgent from you." But when I got to Slack, I had no idea. So, um, yeah, I really put myself there in the eye of the storm of Inspiro, and I really enjoyed it. But maybe I enjoyed it a little bit too much. But hey, this is me saying I don't come from a rich family. It was very clear for me as a young Brazilian man joining Inspiro that I was probably the poorest person in the room at all times. If my situation had been different and I had means, like I don't know, or my family gave me money every month because I'm a spoiled brat, I would work for Inspiro for free. I would definitely work for Inspire for free. My There was a lot of that was economic pressure on me.
I feel you. Thank you for sharing. This feels like very beautiful, heart opening, and very useful as well to hear. Um, and actually, what comes up for me now is, so given that experience that you had, how do you take these learnings into your new Catalyst role, which I assume is a completely different context, new network, new organization, and you already have the experience. So I assume that you play your cards differently. Um, so what changed in how you do the Catalyst role now, not necessarily in terms of the actual activities, but how you, Joriam, are showing up, and how do you take care of yourself as well?
Uh, not only I developed a lot of not only I developed a lot of tools when I was working as a catalyst, but also I learned how to develop tools. Um, so I showed up with a much deeper toolbox to my new work. But also, I knew from the start that I would have to eventually create new tools and how to do them. From the get-go, first identify what's the problem, what sorts of problems could use this systematized approach, what other problems cannot. With some problems, you can only solve with conversation. Other problems, you can turn them into a tool. Some sorts of conflict will require your attention all the time. Other sorts of problems can be completely avoided if you just create a system to deal with them. So I had a sense of those things that I just didn't have when I started as a catalyst. It helped that being an Inspire catalyst was so experimental. There's so much experimentation all the time. And yeah, so I showed up with this toolbox, and also it really helped that I knew nothing about health and care. Because when I was started working for Inspiro, it was already part of my core, this distributed networks and a lot of the themes in the Enspiral was themes that were dear to me. While in my current work, there's a lot of conversations that the events that I help hosting that I barely know what people are talking about. You know, the distribution of asthma medication in the Midwest, I am clueless. So that creates a very useful separation. I know where my role is. My role is here. I plug into here and I plug into there. While in Enspiral, I was also not only hosting the conversation, but I could join all of the conversations and I could join all of the reverberations of all the conversations. I could fit in absolutely every slot. And now I know exactly the slot that I fit. So that really helps in this controlling my hours and my expectations and whatnot. If I work for a network of something that I care deeply about, a network of game designers, I might be again lost. You know, but because this network is so far away from my expertise, most professionals have a different expertise, it helps. But function-wise, in the actions that I do in my day-to-day, the work is very similar, honestly.
Well, this is fascinating to hear that the fact that you maybe don't have this knowledge of the topic is to your advantage.
Yeah,
It's really cool.
in this particular case, it's to my advantage because I know they want me to host the call. I'm good at hosting calls, but the call is about a theme that I am clueless about. So I can't even join the conversation if I wanted to.
Perfect. You have the natural boundary that makes it easy for you to but yeah, it makes it easy for you to find where you can be the most effective, right? And that's your role at the end of the day as a catalyst to
Exactly, yeah.
catalyze, not to necessarily add content to the theme.
Exactly. So when people are presenting and I'm paying attention to the chat box, I am being a more effective catalyst than if I was paying attention to the presentation.
That's another gem. I'm just taking mental notes. Like you're just like throwing so many gold stuff at me. It's wonderful. Okay, I have another question. What organizations or groups or networks like could really use a catalyst, and which ones is like, nah, that's not something that you need? Is there some kind of taxonomy that you see here?
Um, I'm gonna leave the the territory of experience and I'm gonna enter the territory of opinion, if that's okay.
Of
Just want
course.
that to be clear. Um, I am I am factory floor. I don't have a lot of experience in hiring. I don't have a lot of experience in evaluation. This is far away from my toolbox. But here's what I'm 100% sure. Networks that are big enough, how big? I don't know. But networks that are big enough um, that operate as a network, not those groups that call themselves networks when they're actually just a pyramid, but networks that are mostly voluntary based. So people are there because they want to be there. I can only imagine that all networks like that could benefit from a catalyst. And if it's, you know, if it's easy to plug in work and whatnot, even a network with 20 people could really benefit from a catalyst. It doesn't have to be a full-time catalyst or anything. But yeah, they could benefit from somebody just trying to instigate connections. Michał, we were in the gathering, like, what, a couple of weeks ago, last month, and you saw me catalyzing in that incredibly contained space. How many were we? 25? Um, and that is enough people for you to create connections between them. You just appoint them like, hey, this guy just said that 20 minutes ago. It's exactly what you're talking about right now. Do you want me to reserve a room for you? That's it. You know, it's just a way to pay attention to things. Um, and I imagine, again, this is opinions. I imagine that even networks that are not voluntary, that, for example, a network that hires a bunch of people, so they sort of need to be there if they want to be paid. I still think that the catalyst can benefit a lot of those networks depending on the themes. But basically, if your group feels disconnected, if people from your group feel disconnected from the group, if people from your network feel that they don't have enough connections, they don't have enough permission to build with the other people that are part of that network, that is the indicative. Oh, I probably could use a catalyst. If
Mm,
if if there's a critical mass of who feel they do not belong here, then a catalyst can help first understand what would create the sense of belonging and then implement it.
I feel you. Is there any like on the other side, like this kind of organizations group, just like no, Catalyst is not really what you need.
Uh, I think I don't know, man. There are different styles of project management, right? And I don't want to diss project managers. I think they're absolutely essential. Please marry me. But there is this style of project management that you try to occupy every single living moment of people's lives.
Mm.
Uh, if that is being implemented in a group, there's no point in hiring the catalyst, you know?
There's no
Uh,
space for it, basically.
there's no space for it, exactly. And if you tell people like, from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., that's your time to be catalyzed, I'm not sure this could ever work.
I see what you mean. Yeah, it's like too flexible, too intuitive, in between the lines and everything that it like there is some structure, but it cannot be like really forced, rigid type of managerial approach.
Imagine The Office, the series with the
Yeah.
like a very typical, stereotypical office company. The catalyst could operate in the break room, not in the break room, sorry, in the coffee room. But if you hire somebody to operate in the coffee room, you destroy the coffee room, you know? So the company need to be or the network needs to be flexible enough so people have free time to go somewhere by their own volition, and then the catalyst can work with that.
Sounds good. So it's just using the it makes what I'm hearing is it makes sense for Catalyst to exist in networks when there is really space for people to follow their own path of whatever the network is about, and rather than being told do ABC in that order in that time.
If the catalyst is hired to boost and make something tangible out of people's enthusiasm, then groups that want to direct what people should be enthusiastic about, what the catalyst can do will become incredibly limited. You need to find exactly the people who already have the enthusiasm for the thing that the group needs to do, that the directing team needs to do. These people might exist, they might exist, but it's a different interaction than my current job, where I can tell people whatever you're interested, we're going to work on that. This is a powerful thing to do, you know?
Very powerful. Yeah, you're directing energy again. I think I have only one last question left in me. Like I feel like wow, I'm just growing so much in this conversation. So thank you so much. Uh, but like, what is to kind of circle back to the role of a catalyst, not necessarily specifically you, but just catalyst in Enspiral, and Enspiral at the moment does not have an active catalysts, or there used to be two, now there's zero. What do you see kind of the future? Do we actually need a catalyst? Could we use a catalyst? Is this something that is still useful for us to like proactively seek as an organization or as a network, or is it just kind of a technology we developed, it served us, but it just happened that at the moment there's nobody really stepping in and we don't have the energy to catalyze the catalyst search?
I think there's two things for the future specifically. First, I am personally interested at some point to systematize a bunch of the things that I talked about here with you in more detail and with examples and whatnot. if you're watching this video and you have the means, the financial means to help me out with this, I would love to do something like that one day. It's at this moment of my life, I don't have enough capacity to just dedicate my time. Maybe one day I will. So I definitely hope so. So there's something to look forward to the future, because if that handbook page already had a real world impact, I imagine that something more structured, clearer, with more examples, could be a big deal. And this is one of the things that we do in Enspiral, right? We create social technology, we prototype the future of work, and then we make it public. So I would love to work on something like that. Now, as for Enspiral having catalysts, I hope so. And here's the thing, there's a couple of different movements happening in Enspiral right about now. So the Enspiral Europe node was released, what, December or January? Um, it was less than 4 months ago for sure. So that is something that never happened before. And when I went to the last retreat in the summer of 2020, on the car ride that I was having with Uli, he already said like, yeah, it would be great if we had a catalyst, because I really miss your work and you could help train someone. And I said, I could help train someone. I would be down for that. And also, like, just yesterday or 2 days ago, the first Enspiral DAO was launched. So what will be the repercussions of this? I'm not sure, but the thing that I'm sure is that new things are happening and groups are experimenting with the new things. So one of those things, one of those projects, one of those new ideas might be the perfect cooking pot for us to make yet another catalyst. And I would be the first in line to not only vouch for this idea, but to help training that person. I have limited capacity, but my capacity is not zero. I just spent an hour here with you, and like I have this hour, I want to dedicate this hour. So maybe if we have enough energy, enough finances, we could figure out another catalyst. Yeah, but here's the thing. I have this hour to spend here with you. I hope this conversation reverberates and somebody pays attention to this. But I don't have the capacity to figure out this catalyst thing on my own right now. So if you're listening to this video and you want to support this idea, talk to me. Send me a message. I'm back on Slack. There you go. This is
Wow.
some catalyzing in real time.
Wow, it's happening.
It's
Recorded
happening.
for the future. And
This
you're
is the job,
back
by
on
the way.
Slack. You're back on Slack, bro. This is so good after over a year, no, of a break. Welcome.
Uh,
Your first
Thank you.
post was excellent.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, wow. I feel like this is such a beautiful yeah, like theory exploration and maybe setting in stone for some kind of training resource, whether it's a course, a book, whatever training that might happen one day. And I would love to support you in any way that I can to make this happen. And also I love this practical bits of catalyzing that you're just dropping here and there. So thank you so much for that. Super useful. Thank you for taking the time.
Cool. And hey, here's a recording. Oh, no, this is not recording. Oh, it's still recording. Okay. Here's a recording of how we make simple decisions on Inspire, if anybody is still watching this until the end. So, Michał, I think that we can just add a paragraph on top of the handbook saying like we don't currently have any active catalysts, but this page is still here for a reason. We believe that this technology is still relevant and creating impact in the world. And if you want to hear more about that, Joriam and Michał recorded this video to talk exactly about that. Here's the link to the video. So yeah, just having the minimal viable justification for the page to still be there. But if people want to dig more, then there you go. You created this resource in a very very precise way. This is exactly what people need to know if they're truly interested. And we know that some people really spend hours exploring with our handbook. So it's not crazy for me that somebody would watch this whole video and be interested.
Mm, I feel you. Thank you so much for adding this. And yeah, green, thumbs up. That's exactly what I wanted to put on the top of the of the handbook page. So my
Perfect.
need was fulfilled. Thank you so much.
You got it, man.